Hello and welcome to The Mohit Show. In this video, I'll be covering posts from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. On to this video's first post, titled, Finally at Peace with Myself. This is by a desisted female individual. If you told me at 13 that one day I will desist and accept myself as lesbian, I would call you a TERF, a transphobe, and say that this will never happen. But it did. For the last few months, nearly a year, I was constantly doubting my social transition, and about a month ago I decided to come out again to some people, this time as a desisted lesbian, and open up about my experience with social transition and gender dysphoria. Of course, I still have some work to do, but trust me when I tell you that it's impossible to describe the relief I feel. I no longer feel pressured to transition as a way to relieve my dysphoria, and in fact my dysphoria slightly faded over the time as I got older. I no longer feel like I have to bind my chest, to wear only masculine clothing, to try my best to appear like a cis male would. Now from the comments, a detrans male individual comments, why is there so much pressure in the world to where a 13-year-old you would feel the need to transition and call people TERFs for talking to you about the downsides of it? I'm sorry that happened, and I'm sorry there's so much pressure in the media to do that. I don't know why this has become such a prominent thing in our society, but it has, and it's wild. A detrans female individual comments, that's awesome. Smiley face. I also feel like my dysphoria faded a lot over the years. Too bad it took like 10 years. LOL, I guess I needed that much time to feel okay in my skin after the unwanted puberty. Now on to the next post, titled, Detransitioning and Embarrassment. This is by a desisted female individual. Hi everyone, I've been a passive lurker on this subreddit for months now. I have identified as a female to male male for 6 years. Because I'm still a minor and have rational parents, I've been fortunate enough not to be placed onto hormones or have any type of surgery done. The real point of figuring out I was utterly wrong was a very, very close female to male friend detransitioning. I was shocked because she seemed like the golden standard for being transgender. I realized that being male was a grass is always greener on the other side type of deal, along with very, very severe internalized misogyny. I hate being perceived as feminine in any way because being feminine was bad and weak. I hated men perceiving me as less than them simply for my sex. I have such a genuine mental issue when it comes to being a woman in society. I can't even stand the thought of being a man's girlfriend because I will just be a man's girlfriend, and I will be lesser and unequal in a relationship. Sorry for the long background info. I know I need to change to a therapist who does not affirm me being transgender and can actually talk through my issues. I am so embarrassed to have to tell everyone I was wrong. I don't want it being rubbed in my face or a gotcha moment for my rational family. Because I have identified this way since age 11, I don't even know how to be a woman, and I have no clue what teachers and friends will think. The future seems so uncertain, and I'm unsure how I should begin to publicly come out as my birth sex again. From the comments, a desisted individual comments, the wisest people are those who can admit they're wrong. What you are doing is not easy. People will go to great lengths to not admit making a mistake. They will lie, cheat, gaslight, and more. They would rather change the whole world rather than admit they're wrong. But what you did is suck up your pride and make the right choice to admit a mistake. Don't feel embarrassed because you made a mistake, because people can't do what you just did. Admitting your mistakes is just step 1. Step 2 is what you will do to fix your mistakes. If you can figure that out, you'll be fine. Also, I don't know your relationship with your family, but I'm sure they would be relieved to know what you're going through. About the wife-girlfriend stuff, there are a lot of douchebags out there who will treat you like that, but there are also a lot of decent men who won't and will treat you properly. Take your time and find them if that's something you really want. A detrans female individual comments, I would much rather be embarrassed than sterilized along with an unfortunate manly voice. And another detrans female individual comments on the original post, there is no certain way to be a woman. Just be yourself. One of my biggest fears when detransitioning was other people's reactions and judgments, but turns out I didn't have to worry at all. It was very mild. Everyone was understanding. It will be awkward at times, but it'll be fine. Next post. Titled, Why do we treat gender dysphoria with medical transition? I think all of us who at one point made the decision to transition are aware that gender dysphoria is an extremely difficult condition to have. I have a textbook case of gender dysphoria. Born a boy, have wanted to be a girl since age 4, am feminine and attracted to men. And it causes me so much pain that I was just not born female. Right now, I'm in a space where I've stopped taking my hormones, but I'm really struggling to commit to a full detransition for a variety of different reasons. But mostly because I'm so attached to the idea that I can look like and live like a woman in society. I'm aware at this point that I will never actually be able to change my sex. But I just want to vent because I don't understand why transition has become the psychological and medical dogma for people with gender dysphoria. First of all, we're not honest with people about the fact that transitioning does not change your sex. It changes certain physical attributes that cause you to appear like the opposite sex, and for many can make them pass, but fundamentally our sex is immutable. I feel like the fact that it is now called gender-affirming care is really manipulative, because it sells the idea to, say, a person like me, that I'm a woman and I'm simply getting healthcare to affirm my innate gender identity, when in reality I will never be a woman because I was not born female. I can merely look like a woman. Why aren't we telling people the honest truth that hormones/surgeries can make you look female or male, but they won't actually change you into the opposite sex? Second of all, we have only been treating gender dysphoria in this way maybe 100 years since cross-sex hormones and transition surgeries were developed. Before then, people with gender dysphoria just had to cope with their condition or change their social presentation. So, fundamentally, transition is actually a radical step that is still new and experimental in all of human history. Also, these procedures can create major negative health impacts and sometimes irreversible physical damage. So, why are we seeing transition as a normal and standard way to cure gender dysphoria when these medical procedures are still so relatively new and dangerous? Why can't we just encourage people to express gender variance without changing their bodies, as has occurred for all of human history before these medical procedures were invented? Finally, why are we treating transition as a normal course of action for all people with gender dysphoria? For instance, a young child who has never actually experienced going through their birth sex puberty doesn't necessarily know that they will still have body dysmorphia as an adult, and that their gender dysphoria couldn't be cured by changes in social presentation rather than transition. On the flip side, why are we allowing older people, like 30 and up, who haven't experienced chronic gender dysphoria for years on end, and will definitely struggle to pass given how developed they are in their birth sex to transition, without being honest with them about what these procedures do and don't do? And why are we allowing people who haven't experienced chronic long-term dysphoria to transition, regardless of age and development? I don't know if any of this makes sense, but I'm struggling with the lies that I have been sold. I blame myself for transitioning because at the end of the day, I should have thought more critically about what I was doing and what was and wasn't possible, instead of living in a delusional fantasy land that I could somehow become a biological woman. But still, I'm sort of upset that we have therapists, doctors, surgeons, and a society that is seeing transition as a totally normal and easy fix to gender dysphoria when it isn't necessarily. Also, I wish my therapists, doctors, and parents had felt comfortable critically questioning if transition would really treat my gender dysphoria. It's like we're not allowed to actually help people with gender dysphoria if the final answer isn't transition. Like we can't even question people's identity anymore because it's gender affirming care. I don't know. Sorry if this doesn't make sense. Any thoughts? Now, from the comments, a detrans female individual comments, changing sex has always been the goal. They were trying to transplant ovaries into a man from as soon as these surgeries started. Lily Elb. There's a reason trans advocates have been using terms like sex reassignment surgery, transsexual, born in the wrong body, a woman's brain in a man's body, and they constantly compare it to intersex conditions. Despite the lack of evidence, they still haven't given up on this. Many hold out hope that one day it'll be possible to give trans women ovaries, uteruses, and real vaginas, and maybe even change their DNA. It's amazing what quack doctors can get away with. People just blindly trust these charismatic surgeons. When they insist, we must defer to them because they are the experts. Useful idiots in journalism and medical associations simply repeat what they have been told about overwhelming evidence and scientific consensus without actually looking into the research. It may only take a single activist to capture an institution and change its policies so that dissent is considered bigotry. Many critics are afraid to come forward because they could lose their job. There's a long history of dangerous and ineffective medical treatments being endorsed by prominent medical groups. This medical transition thing has had more staying power than other medical fads because it got tied to gay rights groups and political identities in ways that, say, homeopathy and lobotomies didn't. Also, nobody has a fetish for homeopathy. Powerful men aren't getting off on it. And while it might be embarrassing to be a homeopathy practitioner or their patient if people say it's nonsense, few people have built their entire social identity and career around it. Many powerful men would be deeply embarrassed if the public stopped believing that trans women were womanly. A detrans male individual comments on the original post. Every once in a while, medicine gets a big head and likes to claim that it's discovered a miracle cure for the human condition. Unfortunately, these medical misadventures can cause a lot of havoc before people figure out how flawed the miracle actually is. A desisted female individual comments, the medical system is susceptible for mass hysteria phenomena, especially if money can be earned. You were and are surrounded by professionals in denial, and they did not take responsible care. So don't blame yourself too harshly. The original poster replies to that, I appreciate this, but I do think I should have done more research. However, I will say I was heavily influenced by both a social and medical culture that is all about affirming gender identity. The messaging wasn't what I was trying to look more like a woman so that I could passively live as a woman in society. The messaging was that I am a woman. That really changes the nature of these treatments. If you're trying to transition from one sex to the other while being fully aware that takes time and doesn't happen overnight, that's one thing. But if you're told that you are the sex you're trying to transition into already, it adds layers of desperation to the treatment because you have to start as early as possible. It's also hard because while I'm totally for people expressing themselves however they want to, we're telling women they can be men and men they can be women purely by identifying as such. When I look at the stories of people with crippling dysphoria, they truly could no longer live as their birth sex and were willing to put in the time and money and effort to pass as the opposite sex. Now anyone can identify as trans with or without dysphoria, and we have to see that identity as valid. I wish we were just more honest with people that you cannot change your sex. This will not turn off legitimately dysphoric people who simply want to alleviate their condition, but it will hopefully dissuade people from thinking these treatments automatically make them into a woman or a man and that society must affirm that. On to the next post, titled, Gender Nonconforming and Straight? This is by a desisted female. Why is it that people are fine with the idea you might be gender non-conforming and gay, in my case, a butch lesbian, but they're completely bewildered if you're gender non-conforming and straight? In my teen years, I heard it a lot, especially playing ice hockey in a girls' league. Oh, it's okay that you want to wear men's clothes and have short hair and whatever else. You're just gay. But I'm not. I've never been attracted to a woman. Then it kinda got in my head like, well, if wanting to look like this means I'm gay, I must be a gay man because I'm not obviously not a gay woman. It felt like my only hope for a relationship was that I'd end up in some awkward middle ground where bi men might be into me because both straight and gay men tended not to be. I wasn't woman enough for one, nor man enough for the other. It matters to me less and less as I just become more comfortable being myself, but I do continue to wonder about it. And if those of us straight, grown-up tomboys are ever going to stop getting raised eyebrows because people don't have a category in their heads that includes us. Now from the comments, it's like you said, they don't have a narrative or a pattern established in their head for us, yet. Think about it, when was the last time you saw a gender non-conforming / tomboy woman in a healthy straight relationship depicted anywhere? Not healthy by virtue of being straight, just where she's not called a man or being disparaged. Where her tomboyish self isn't given a makeover or played down by the end of the story. Where she's just loved for exactly who she is. I really yearn for stories like this. That's why it's so important for us to be unapologetically ourselves. For every gender non-conforming woman out there doing her own thing, loving who she loves, many other girls / tomboys / young women will have someone to look at to and say, I think she's like me. And that's comforting and invaluable. A detrans female individual comments on the original post. I feel this so hard. I felt very similar to you in thinking you would fit in best as a queer man who bi men might be into. I do like women, but I've always known I liked men too. I think it's something a lot of us struggle with. The truth is, there are men who find tomboys attractive, like my current partner. He loves masculine or tomboyish women. He loves a combination of masculine and femme traits. But we're all told we could only be attractive as a lesbian. Someone who's questioning their own gender identity comments on the original post. It's the same for me but the other way around. I'm a more feminine / androgynous male naturally. As a teen, people told me I was gay all the time. And I didn't even dress alternative or had long hair back then. Looking back, there were actually 2 reasons people saw me as gay. First of all, because I just didn't have the genetics to grow facial hair or other masculine features. I kept a more gender-neutral or even feminine face. So basically genetics. The other reason is because I'm introverted, socially anxious, and quiet. Probably undiagnosed autism too. And somehow those traits are seen as feminine / gay, which I don't really understand. A detrans female individual comments on the original post. That's probably because being gender non-conforming and homosexuality often go hand in hand. For instance, in studies of dysphoria in children, often dysphoria manifested in homosexual children who were gender non-conforming, and those children later desisted and grew up to identify as just gay adults. Brain scan studies too tend to reflect that whatever gender differences did exist in a set of trans-identified individuals, more so reflected sexuality respective to natal sex than they did gender identity. So there's a pretty clear link that's guideline, but it's not a hard rule. Maybe because of that, being gender non-conforming tends to not really be a mainstream thing for straight adults of either sex. Society rewards gender non-conformity itself to be attractive. It's not a rule though, and unfortunately women in my experience do tend to be more flexible when it comes to that. Which sucks when you're not in that market, haha. To add to that, not to be depressing, as I'm sure you and every person who's had to interact with straight men knows, straight men seem to have a very narrow range of attraction. In my opinion, straight men are more into femininity than women, if that makes sense. Like, straight women might have their own preferences, but there's a wide range. Meanwhile, my female friends have their dates visibly get shook, or even have their boyfriends freak if they don't shave or do full makeup or whatnot. Then to add to that, I'd also say that some men have a really warped sexuality. I've seen and heard male friends slash classmates slash etc. make the worst, most fucked up comments about women when they think they're safe to do so. The vast majority of this back when I was female to male in college. Stuff like who was the most and least fuckable in our classes, including female professors, making rape jokes, talking about porn, etc. Mind you, I never hung out with dude bro types. These were CS majors, all nerds and weebs who in real life were basically kissless virgins who would have shriveled if a girl so much as looked in their direction. While I'm ranting, I think that porn has really fucked up young men to the extent that a lot of younger, 20 to 30 straight male friends I have are, jokingly or not, into trap slash femboy content, while I don't know a single female friend who is, not even a lesbian one, myself included. And if I flip it around, I don't know any straight woman into tomboys, though I've definitely wished, lol. Maybe reaching, but in my opinion, it's also loosely connected to why men develop paraphilias for things connected to stereotypes of femininity like stockings, panties, high heels, skirts, etc. Whereas women don't really develop these things for male equivalents. The closest I can think of is maybe women who like men in uniforms or suits? Question. Which aren't even remotely the same thing. Anyways, there isn't a thing wrong with you. Being gender nonconforming and straight isn't bad or new or even hopeless. There's absolutely gender nonconforming women who are straight slash bi and find a guy for them, and people's reactions are more indicative of societal stuff than anything wrong with you. It sucks because even saying that doesn't mean that suddenly people stop assuming things and projecting onto you. Sorry for the super long and very, very verbose rant. There are definitely others like you on this sub who've gone through a similar path, and hopefully it helps you to know you're not alone. A lot of people share their struggles with being gender nonconforming and gay on the sub, but I can't imagine how lonely it must feel to be gender nonconforming and straight specifically. I don't think that things will change in the near future, to be quite honest, especially as it seems gender stuff has only gotten stricter in recent years. Rip. But I do hope there can be a place for grown-up tomboys and gender nonconforming women to be accepted in society. A desisted individual replies to that, this is just to verify your first paragraph. I'll include that link in the description. For myself, basically because I wasn't sure that childhood gender non-conforming behavior oftentimes indicated homosexualities. It just seems to me that gender sensitivity training needs to start as soon as possible in school or even preschool. Young men and even young women basically demanding certain feminine and masculine attributes to be properly proclaimed a woman or a man begun their training with their parents, then school, social media and basic advertising promotes even more stereotypical presentations. What is needed is for a more accepting society which teaches from the very beginning that it's okay to be who you are, no matter how you present. It's just so sad that still in the 21st century, with all our other advancements, people still judge one another just by looks and or dress and or sexual orientation. Just seems kind of so primitive and backwards. A detrans female individual replies to that. Thank you. Wrote my comment early in the morning in my time zone and was feeling lazy. I appreciate you finding sources. I think such training isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I also question if it would solve the problem. There's a link I'll include in the description. Gendered socialization begins in the womb and continues throughout childhood and beyond, and all adults, even people who are aware of them, have years and years of ingrained beliefs around gender and perpetuating those beliefs in their own children, and so on. It's tough to undo that, and it goes beyond just surface level stuff like social media. It's in both little things and big things, from the way our legal system screw over female victims of male violence to the way women are overly scrutinized for their eating habits and weight almond mom versus the overwhelming amount of fat logic slash fat people hate being aimed at women, to the way women are over-sexualized for just existing, to the way female bodies are othered in areas you might not expect, like car seat safety testing. You can't really escape it, and you can't really undo it easily because of how deeply it permeates all aspects of society and life. And for all the calling out women and feminists have done, we have a long way to go, and yet, long way to go yet. I don't know. It sounds defeatist, so I should clarify and say I don't mean to say we shouldn't be educating and advocating for change. We've come so far already. I do think some level of training is a good idea, especially for children. It's just tough when school is just one, honestly decently big but still discrete part of the social sphere that children exist in. Parents and other influences still have more sway. There's also the fact that all the training in the world won't necessarily make being gender non-conforming attractive to straight people. I do think it might make it more socially acceptable to be openly gender nonconforming or attracted to gender nonconforming people as a straight person, especially because so much of gender is socially constructed. But when I consider that being gender nonconforming seems to be linked to strongly to being gay, or at least bi, I do wonder if there might be an innate sexual aversion or innate sexual preference in at least some straight people to or against gender nonconformity. If that's the case, I would find it immoral to try to force straight people to try to shift their preferences. I maintain that people can be as exclusionary as they want about who gets to go in their pants, lol. Otherwise, I 1000% agree that judgment and prejudice outside of the bedroom is never fair or right. It really is sad people still judge based on stuff like this in the present day. Especially when we dress slash look slash present doesn't need to be an issue. A desisted individual replies to that. I appreciate your reply. Guess I'm just old. Gender non-conforming is, I don't know, sounds like such a made-up term. So, some females were tomboys and some males like dogs. Seems females can get away with that more than males. Mainly because moms might think it more of a phase in comparison to many dads who might start beating up slash debasing their male child because of the fear he would grow up gay. The homosexual stigma is way more worrisome, I think, from the male perspective than female. Maybe just because males are more aggressive in many of their reactions, or because their progeny is a reflection of themselves. I don't know. Sounds like a good ethnobiological master thesis, maybe. A desisted male individual comments on the original post. People will always try to diminish you to make themselves feel comfortable. They're small. Ignore them. Now on to the next post, titled Regret about Family Life During Transition. This is by a detrans female individual. Does anyone else regret all of the wasted years they spent arguing with their family and parents about pronouns and gender stuff? My parents and family were trying their best to support me about something they had no idea about at all, and something that I had sprung on them randomly and overnight. I spent so many years going around in circles with my father, not happy about how his pronoun use wasn't perfect all the time, not happy that he didn't call me his son all the time, not happy about anything, and then cutting him off for months at a time when he did something slightly wrong. That mentality that comes with transitioning is so damaging. Now that I've detransitioned, my father has since moved hundreds of miles away, and I can't just drive down the street to see him like I used to. I regret spending the last years of my young adulthood and living at home arguing with him. Devastates me. The same thing with my mom. I always wanted to be alone, obsessed with my transition. Now I'm an adult and I don't get to see her every day. I know I'm grieving growing up at the same time, but man, it sucks. Anyone else have similar experiences? So much time I can't get back. Now from the comments. A detrans female individual comments. Yes, I regret making my parent cry and worry. Thankfully, I was never one of those people who scream at their parents for misgendering or dead-naming them. Trans spaces these days are full of activists saying parents are violent abusers if they don't use their chosen pronouns, and encourage you to threaten to hurt yourself if they don't comply or go no contact. It's horrendous. Now on to today's last post, titled, Speaking on Our Experiences is Frowned Upon. This is by a detrans female individual. Hey, I'm not sure if this post is more so for other detransitioners or for the people who scroll here to argue and downvote. Hell, there's overlap between those groups. But I'm just struck by how speaking only about one's own experience and how you feel your own personal issues should have been regarded by medical and mental health professionals attracts disdain. In every group therapy I've been to, as long as you make I statements instead of speaking on other people's lived experiences, you're allowed to speak your mind. That is healthy communication. But if you are detrans, people don't care if it's your own mental state and health you're reflecting on. They will take issue with how you feel about your own life. I'm not here to tell others how to live or who they are. I'm just working my own life, and I'm concerned about the negative experiences that got me here. Now, from the comments, a desisted female individual comments, it's because the nature of trans ideology is not just about any individual person. It literally makes assertions about everyone on the planet. The whole premise rests on everyone having a true inner sex, your gender identity that is supposed to be who you truly are, and remains constant throughout your life. But this idea is bullshit. Our existence is direct evidence of that. That's why it bothers them when we talk about our experiences. We directly show that trans ideology simply doesn't reflect the reality of human nature. But many trans people's identities rest on trans ideology. They know deep down that it's really unstable, and that's incredibly uncomfortable for them, so they lash out at anything that even remotely threatens it. It's why so many activists work tirelessly to hide our existence, and why the ones who actually acknowledge this require we use very specific words to describe our existence, saying we were never truly trans in the first place. The desisted female individual comments on the original post. 100%. I commented my story on a Facebook post and it got angry reacts and someone called it rot. People don't care for the truth. They care for comfort and thinking they're right, even when they're not. A detrans female individual comments on the original post. It's absolutely horrifying. I can't speak about it to anyone. They all dead me when I say I took tea for 3 years. I changed my name to a boy's name. I was addicted to tea. I bought it myself. Never at the doctor. I spent thousands. My boyfriend wants to go to a doctor to become a woman to get me estrogen, but I know it's for himself. I can get estrogen online, but I don't want another cardiac arrest. The original poster replies to that. Why would you need estrogen online? Did you have an oophorectomy? It takes time, but your body's natural estrogen production will increase after stopping tea. A detrans female individual replies to that. That's exactly why I don't tell no one, and because I can't feel my nipples, have an Adam's apple, of my voice is low as fuck, tummy looks like a dude, and you know the rest. The original poster replies to that, yeah, but do you have ovaries still? And the detrans female individual replies to that, yes, do you mean to tell me they are removing trans men's ovaries? And the original poster replies to that, yeah. Some people get them removed during the hysterectomy, and it's required by some surgeons. A desisted individual comments on the original post. I'm sorry you had this experience in group therapy. Usually there are mental health professionals moderating these groups. Do they not react when people make an issue of how you speak about your own life? And the detrans female individual replies to that, I don't know. Many are taken aback to hear my experiences. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support this channel. Bye.